Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. Joining me, as always, this week, it's my buddy Tom. How you doing, Tommy?
Hey, friends.
You shortened it. Also joining us this week,
Hello, friends.
Stick to your catchphrase. We don't shorten our catchphrases. You've got an exact catchphrase. That's what we use. All right. Also joining us this week, glad to have him back on the show. It's Mr. Doom and Darkness. How you doing, sir?
G'day, folks. Thanks for having me back.
Good to have you back. How's your spring going, Doom?
It's cold and raining at the moment, so it's kind of a little bit miserable. But
Gotcha.
Apart from that, fantastic.
Okay, great. So today we are going to talk about something that I think probably we all have a bit of an obsession with in different ways, and that is having fun and being competitive with quote-unquote second-tier armies. All of us, despite what many might see Tom as being a power gamer. I'm sure Tom, I know you get that reputation sometimes in the comments, but that's not true. If everybody offline saw the lists Tom throws at me constantly, where he's like throwing 7 different Swifthawk agents lists at me and trying to figure them out and stuff like that, that's the stuff that Tom thinks about. So we all have this interest in being outside the box.
I still think there's gas in the Life Taker engine.
Sure. Yes, I know. I understand. So you like finding interesting ways to use things that are maybe that are according to common wisdom, or like not as good, right?
Right.
I think we all have a shared love of that.
Now, if I finish this daughter's army to completion, that probably won't be the case.
Sure. I mean, Doom definitely proves this out. He has a huge number of battle reports recently with the Gutbusters. So if anybody is proving their love and commemorating it, it's Mr. Doom and Darkness. So go ahead.
I'm all about the underdog.
There you go. Exactly. This is going to be the discussion of the underdogs. How do we have fun? How do we compete with the underdogs? That's what we're going to talk about tonight. But of course, first, as always, we're going to do some news. So, Tom, what do we got, man? What's the news?
Let's do a rumor engine first.
Okay, we can do that. Sure. Do you have a pre-guess for this one while I bring it up so I can...
I think it's split 50-50. I think there's an obvious guess, and I think there's a non-obvious guess.
All right.
Do you have any opinions on it before I weigh in?
I'm bringing it up now. Okay. Rumor engine. Here we go. Share it out. Boop, boo. There it is.
So, Doom, do you have any initial guesses on this?
Right. Option 1, it's a particularly nasty cod piece for the new Keeper of Secrets.
I dig it.
Number 2, it's the 3rd Moon Clan Shadespire warband.
So I think the obvious guess here is Moon Clan. That's the one where I think that I think that's what makes sense. The non-obvious one is somebody shared the old, really terrible Keeper of Secrets model, the really old one. And one of its upreached hands was a scythe that was covered in the same metal plating.
Yep.
So, I think the low-hanging fruit would be Moon Clan. The other would be this is actually the Keeper of Secrets.
Okay.
So,
yeah, it's a Slaanesh model. Yes.
Ooh.
And it's the claw. You're looking at one side of the claw, and it's the armored part of the claw. Some of the old Slaanesh stuff, they had armor on, and rivets driven into some of their claws. It mimics the shape and the curve that they like to utilize on those Slaanesh claws, on the chitinous sort of claws, but in armor form. So I don't know that I think it's the Keeper of Secrets, but it's definitely metal. I mean, other than the rivets, you can tell it's metal paint because you can see the horrible visible pigment in GW metal on the screen. If you ever want to see why GW metal is bad, just look at this. Look at this visible pigment. This just it looks like concrete when you put it in black and white.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
But at any rate,
tell us how you really feel, Vince.
that they're a crap paint. I don't have a problem with most paints, but metal paints I have a thing about. Anyway, yeah. So like, and this is not like in the aesthetic. There was Slaanesh models that had metal in their claws. I don't know how big this is. Like looking at it, this is actually pretty zoomed in. See this edge highlight right here and here. Yep. Like if this was a big claw, this edge highlight wouldn't be that thick and rough.
Sure.
So it could be like just a normal new claw thing. So there you go. That's my thought. It's a Slaanesh thing. It's about time we start seeing some more Slaanesh things. They'll start trotting them out now since finally the Dark Prince S is on the horizon. So
yeah, I mean, I'll just jump right into those rumors. So relatedly, the Slaanesh Herald that's coming in that Wrath and Rapture box is a Daemonette playing a harp.
Yep, which would be the harp rumor engine we saw sometime back.
Yep. The two plastic, we're told to get 2 new plastic heralds in that
box set. One for Khorne and one for
Khorne and one for, like, one can only hope that as part of the instrument trifecta with like Sloppity Bile Piper and now the harp, that the Khorne Herald is bringing brass. Like something from the brass section is what is.
Sure, yeah, that's. I hope he's got a is a trumpet a brass instrument? It is, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
like a trumpet.
He's got a trumpet. He's got a. Oh my god! Oh god! It would be so amazing if he had like a tuba somehow made out of like a spine and maybe like some shaped bones or something.
Yeah, and it's like maybe the arms of it, like so the sound thing is inside the rib cage, and then the arms are draped over the shoulders.
Yeah, dude, that would be so great. Like he should.
But we should be designing minis.
Khorne with a Khorne Herald with a tuba could just like that could be the greatest.
And a skeleton backpack.
Yeah, like tuba. Funny word. Khorne plus tuba was fantastic. But yeah, no, that makes sense. So we have like the musical herald of each one. Yeah,
we have 2 heralds. I don't know that the Khorne is actually going to be musical, but
I'm saying it is
heralds.
We have 2 points. The harp and the Bile Piper, 2 points make a line. Hence, there you go. All right.
Yeah, but the Tzeentch one didn't. So, anyways,
it was too early. They hadn't thought of this great concept yet. We'll get a new Tzeentch Herald on the other side.
We have a new Fiend of Slaanesh coming. We've seen, and now we know that the Bloodhounds are Fleshhounds, maybe.
Yeah. Yes. What do you ask for?
Plastic Fleshhounds as well.
Yeah. Hashtag release the hounds is finally going to come true. I mean, if we're ever going to see plastic flesh hounds, it would make sense they put them in this big box, and then we get finally get an individual box of them after that
in 6 months. Indeed.
I mean, whenever they decide to trot out individual boxes after this. Like could be 6 months. Sure, I'm not saying no. I'm just saying like whenever it is.
It may be down the road. So now that dog army doesn't look like junk.
I mean, it could be, or it could be like 3 weeks later, because who knows with stuff like that.
That's true. Also related, like we know that release schedules are flexible. We know Moon Clan is coming. It's going to be the first new Grot army, was the rumor, which I think is interesting. The way that was worded. So it's going to be the first new Grot army. It doubles down on the Night Goblin mushroom theme, but also gives them a kind of fairy tale aspect. Units are getting renamed. So the shaman is going to be a madcap shaman. Fanatics are loon smasher fanatics and the like. So we'll get a full like scroll kind of rewriting, renaming. The existing plastic kits will be supported, but new ones it'll be a bit like the dock release, they're saying. So it'll be a bunch of old stuff supported by new stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So are we expecting the Slaanesh Khorne before Moon Clan, or Moon Clan before Slaanesh and Khorne?
I think we're expecting.
I am expecting the Slaanesh Khorne box set before.
Yeah, the Wrath and Rapture will probably
because that is just a Blight War box set, and it'll be the second week of November because you release box sets for Christmas in the second week of November.
Right.
Yep.
Like so I mean, you want to sell something for Christmas, it better be on the freaking shelves by November, like 13th or 14th, when parents go out to buy their kids stuff. So that's your math.
So do you think like we had the January, or we had Tzeentch over the Christmas period, and then we had Nurgle the following year? Do you think there'll be a continued Slaanesh release this Christmas?
Probably.
Or do you think it's just going to be this box set and that's it?
I think we'll actually get like I'm gonna take a gamble here. We may not, but I think we're gonna get Moon Clan. I think we'll see a rare Christmas release.
Oh, you think Moon Clan are coming in December?
I think Moon Clan are coming in December, and here's why.
They're very jolly.
They are very jolly. The PR opportunities of drawing goblins with Christmas hats cannot go on.
They do have little pointed hats, little puffballs on the top, and they're elves.
And they're like, and they're like green, like the pointy ears, and then the green skin with the red Santa suits. Like the opportunities for marketing, like don't write that off. Like I think we could see a jolly Christmas release for Moon Clan.
Yeah, it would bring a lot of Christmas cheer, I think, having those little green guys hanging off Christmas trees and stealing presents and all that sort of stuff.
It's a good point. That marketing campaign does write itself. Yeah, I would expect that we see the box set and then the goblins, and then I won't guess on time period. I'll back Tom's play. That seems like a reasonable call. But I would expect the Slaanesh Khorne box, then the Moon Clan, and then Slaanesh in the new year.
And if we don't get like the full release, what I think we'll do is like we'll get a first week of January release. So it won't be like Nurgle, like or Tzeentch was like end of January. Do you remember that? And Nurgle was like mid-January. Like I think if we do, we will roll right into them if it's not a true December release.
I mean, if they did the goblins, they'd want to do it up front. The problem is you need like support staff to support a release rollout, and you're generally on a skeleton crew like the last 2 weeks of the year at any company.
Right. That's
right.
true.
And Tom, do you have any hot news or gossip there on the Gutbusters battle tome?
No, nope. Real quiet.
I
Real
searched
quiet
around and it said 404 error, book not found.
Maybe we'll hear something next week.
Sure, could always come up. Keep your ear to the ground. You never know when that's going to happen.
I'll stay on it and we'll see what happens. Nothing's going to happen.
Well, I would have said that about beasts for a long time too, and then all of a sudden,
it's true.
Thing.
It's true.
So never count anything out.
For nearer release things, we have the 500th store anniversary dropping this next week. That'll be exciting. I'm looking forward to picking up the aforementioned minis that are associated with that. It's going to be a big deal. I see them.
You're going to take the 5-minute walk down to your store.
Yeah, I am.
And speaking of which, Tom, I'll interrupt this news real quick to congratulate you, because Tom, you took a gold at your local store's Armies on Parade, and you have a pretty well attended store too. So that was all in. Like your store didn't make a distinction, right? Between
no, like we didn't have separate awards. Like so, everybody was competing against everybody. We had 18 showings. Mm-hmm. The only split off category was Youngbloods.
Sure, so of course.
Yeah. So the Youngbloods got the 3 showings got theirs, and then the other 15 of us all were competing, and it was good. There's a lot of strong competition. There's some questions. A lot of a number of the people who took second and third like committed to their Armies on Parade, and what I mean by that is like everything they painted up was glued to their board. Right. They didn't have bases. Yeah. So like they didn't have bases. They made 2 foot by 2 foot dioramas. Mm-hmm. Like that's what I was like. One was the second place was a Tyrannid, like a dune hill. Think about like Starship Troopers, like the desert planet, and like coming out of one of those holes in the ground, like a whole horde of like Tyrannid broodlings or whatever, swarming a knight, like a big robot.
I saw that. I thought it was just amazing. I was amazed at how like Twitter, like over this whole weekend, like everywhere, it was just Armies on Parade, and it was pretty awesome. Just a hobby weekend, and it was a great celebration.
It really was. As a marketing event, boy, is it successful, right? Because it's just that is your feed over this last weekend, and it was awesome. Like I wasn't sad about that. It was fantastic and amazing to see all these people share their big armies, bringing out everything. It was great. I'm super glad that they do this.
Can I jump back real quick?
Yeah.
Paul Wagner asked me if I were to write a Christmas Moon Clan army, what would it consist of? Beyond all the obvious conversions that would need to happen, all the fanatics would have Christmas ornaments that they were swinging around.
Sure. Yeah. That's an easy one. Yeah.
And I would include a rogue idol that's painted up like the Mr. Snowman from Frozen.
Sure. Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah, yeah. The big giant evil snowman or whatever.
The big giant evil snowman would be my
also makes or whatever. Yeah.
So that would be my Christmas, just off the top of my head. Anyways, so thank you. Yeah, it's the medals up there. It was Armies on Parade. It was a lot of fun. It went well. That was this weekend, obviously, and it was all over the Twitterverse, as Michael has mentioned. And then also we had there's a kind of a big event this last time.
There was, yeah.
The World GT,
the Heat finals, yeah.
The Heat final, whatever it's called, yeah.
Yes.
So that happened.
And the winner was
Ben Sava.
Yes, it was. And
Daughters of Cain.
Yep, Ben
I hear he's kind of hot or something.
Oh Jesus. Yep. So unfortunately, that's gonna stick now, because Rob spent a bunch of time on the show talking up Ben before the tournament happened and saying he's so hot right now, making the Hansel from Zoolander quote, which is it's one of my favorite quotes too, and then he has to go and win, just solidifying that to be a thing forever. Ben's going to be on the show next week, so we'll talk to him about some daughters and some other stuff then.
Yeah, it's going to be super exciting.
Was there not another tournament in like Manhattan or Idaho or somewhere where Flesh Eater Courts won? Did that happen?
Did that happen?
I don't know. That's a great question.
First of all,
tell me more about
that.
If
Manhattan
that happened.
or Idaho. Like you couldn't have picked two more distant in the United States.
I heard a mention on like Rob Symes talked about it, and he mentioned it. And he said Flesh Eater Courts won this tournament in America. He didn't really know much more details. I haven't heard anything, like I haven't seen it anywhere. But if someone out there won a tournament with Flesh Eater Courts, that is someone I'd like to talk to.
Absolutely,
we want to have on my channel. Because we can all roll out with Daughters of Cain, but when you're a legend and you take Flesh Eater Courts, right? That's the story I want to hear. So if that is a real story and that happened.
I mean, what I will say is this. Flesh Eater Courts have went through a metamorphosis. And anybody that has actually played them in 2.0 knows that like they're not the joke that they were. Like summoning has done a miraculous thing for them.
Well, so the funny part is, yes, I saw somebody in the comments just made this joke. They said like Sydney or Perth or somewhere, right? But that's not far enough apart. Like, because Perth is still a pretty decently sized.
Yeah, they're both cities. Yeah.
I was gonna reference like isn't there some random little village on the middle of like the highway that runs to the outback, like Alice Springs or something like that? Just like some tiny town like that. That's what I was gonna say. Like it was either Sydney or one of those. I was gonna try to Australian up the reference for you, but I couldn't remember the name of that tiny like town on that highway.
I spent 12 years in Alice Springs.
No, there you go.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
That's awesome.
My impression of it, having never been there, is it's quite a small town in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
So, but apparently somebody posted in the comments that it was the Michigan GT.
Michigan, old close. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Well, which is actually directly between Manhattan and Idaho, basically. That's kind of in the middle.
Really funny. I want to know, like, okay, so what happened? Like, if that's the case, Jake, Sean, what happened?
Yeah, we need to. We're very, like we usually talk to them.
How you lost? Like that's what I want to know.
To Flesh Eater Courts. We'll dig into this and we'll bring back the info, Doom. In time for some investigative journalism. We'll get into it.
That means that the Detroit crew lost to Flesh Eater Courts.
Yeah, that means that a second tier.
That's in their backyard.
Mm-hmm.
Unless one of the Flesh Eater Courts, which is
could be. Yeah. Like I said, we'll get on it. We'll bring back an answer for you. Don't worry. We'll hunt this. We'll hunt this superstar up and drag them into the limelight.
Yep.
Indeed. But that's a big deal. So tournament coming up this next week. We have a couple events.
That's a generically true statement. Almost any week of the year now, which is a fantastic thing.
It's pretty wild, actually, to be honest. I had all this
offered up Sydney and Uluru, so it was just like, that's solid.
We have in 2 weeks we have SoCal Open at 60-ish. Currently, it sounds like they still have room to sign up. So that's happening on the West Coast. On the East Coast, there is Octocon.
Yep.
And they have a 40-ish cap. And I think they're only at 30, so they have, or 31, so they have 9 or 10 spots still available. And that's on the East Coast in the Manhattan. No, not Manhattan.
It's in New Jersey. It's Roxbury Township, New Jersey, and it's Nelson out of Mythicos Studios is hosting it. They're in the store. It's a 40-person tournament, and there's a few. I think they're in the mid-30s right now, so still a couple spots left. So people should absolutely look that up. I mean, I know there's a lot of folks on the East Coast. I know Anthony
Realms at War. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I know Anthony from the Sustainable Center is going to be there. He's going to take his Ideneth, which he finished up. I know Martin Orlando is going to be there, so it'll certainly be a fun time with probably some pretty good armies on the table there.
Also, Realms at War is happening in the UK next week, right?
Yep.
And in the weeks to come, shortly, Blood and Glory in like 3 weeks, Holy Havoc in 3 weeks. There's so many events.
Is Blood and Glory the world's second largest tournament?
Well, when it happens, it will probably be the largest one that has occurred up to that point. And it'll hold that title for a month and a half until it gets absolutely, just elbow dropped from the top rope by CanCon. Assuming that that a bunch of people don't randomly back out of CanCon, which I can see no reason why that would happen. They upped that to what, 220? Clint took it up
220,
to, is that right?
220 at the moment. # we are the meta.
It's amazing. I can't, and that's in January, right?
Yeah, January 21st, which is the Australian Day long weekend, and it's going to be hot, and everyone's going to be wearing shorts, and we're going to be jammed in a big giant shed, and it's going to be awesome, and there's going to be lots of hugs.
Sounds wonderful.
Yep.
That's what I'm looking for. Hugs from other Warhammer players in 40-degree centigrade weather. That's
just
right on my list.
Sweaty balls against sweaty balls. It's going to be fantastic.
Oh no. Yeah.
I think that's our news.
There you go. I mean, obviously there's a lot of stuff going on. Tom and I are both going to the Holy Havoc, and where it's a team tournament and we're teaming up. That same weekend at Blood and Glory, it is notable to mention that they're going to do a preview show. Right. So Pete and Andy are going to be there, and they're going to do their standard preview show. So place your bets, folks. Place your bets.
Wait, so what time is it going to be at 6 a.m. our time? Is it Saturday morning?
I don't remember.
Or
I'll
is it Friday
have to look at the schedule.
Because we'll have to do a show.
We'll hammer it down for next week.
Because we'll be at Havoc and have to do a show.
That's fine. So be it. We can do it after the game or before the game or whatever. Doesn't matter.
We do it on lunch on the first break game.
I mean, whatever.
Between games 1 and 2.
What if it's all 40K stuff, Tom? And we don't. There's no show.
Yeah, right. And so if they did their sisters reveal,
then we would obviously be doing a show.
Sure.
Where we break down when we broke down the Daughters of Cain trailer that's a minute and a half long for an hour. I mean, that's standard trailer reaction stuff. But no, we'll figure it out. I'll have to go look at the schedule. And yes, if there is a lot of AOS news, regardless of us being at the tournament, assume we are going to do something that weekend. If there's not, we won't. That's what it comes down to. Basically, rate it by how much do they talk about Slaanesh. That's what you need to know. Because if we got a Daughters of Cain style introduction to Slaanesh, right? We're doing a 3-hour show. We're gonna break down every angle, every model, every leather strap, every piercing claw, everything. We're getting in deep, real deep into Slaanesh. But if it's goblins, I don't know, we can probably skip it.
Awesome.
All right, so let's turn to some pick of the week. So Doom, what would you like to share with everybody, buddy?
So at the moment, everyone is talking about tournaments and talking about competitive stuff and whatever else. And I want to draw everyone's attention to a very small channel who is also tournament focused, but in complete different ways. So Aussie Wargamer, he's a small guy and he represents everything that's great about Warhammer because he comes from a gaming club of about 10 people, some of which are still learning the rules. He goes and travels to tournaments and he brings his son with him and plays side by side with his son, which is probably the best thing that you could possibly have about Warhammer. And he's going to the largest tournament in the world and he's taking an army that's inspired by King Arthur. So it's Bretonnians and Ilariel. And his series is The Road to Cancon. He's just talking about the concept of his army, the building of it, showing how it develops as he plays. And then when he goes down, he doesn't expect to win it all, but he just wants to bring the coolest themed army, go have a fun time with his family and the community and have a blast. And I think his videos are very short, like they're only 5 minutes each. So it's very easy to go and follow along. And I think it's just a noble series that people should follow. So go check him out, give him a sub, and I think it's a cool idea and worth supporting.
I love it. Yeah, he makes great stuff. He responds to a lot of topics of the week. He's great content, and the idea of bringing a Arthurian Bretonnian army to this tournament, I'm calling it now. He's going 5 games, so there you go.
five losses, you mean?
I didn't say either way. I just said he's going 5 games.
Yeah,
Doom, don't read into it. I can look back and construe this either way I want.
Yeah, safe bet.
Tom, what are you sharing, buddy? What's your pick?
Rob Symes, Honest Wargamer, did a review of the GT. I actually want to push 2 things. Did a review of the GT this last weekend on Monday, and it was like a 2.5-3 hour show, and just did a full breakdown of all of the stuff. And I highly recommend it. It was good. And he went into his games and just talked about all of the different interactions and their reflections on realm rules and the whole deal. And then I also want to spruik Doom's stuff as well.
Our own guest stuff. Yes.
Doom. He has a wonderful channel. Of note, he had a fantastic battle report between Daughters in his Road to CanCon, between Daughters and Beast of Chaos, where Beast thoroughly whomped Daughters of Chaos or Daughters of Cain. And so it's worth watching. And watch how that's done.
Yep. And this week, folks, I'm going to throw a rock at Nagash with a Cygor and take him off the table. So that's going to be fun too.
I can't wait for that not to happen. Now, if you get into him with like, let's say 6 or 9, Bulgor Minotaurs, whatever you want to call them, that are buffed in some way. All right, I could see that happening. Those guys could go. Those guys could do the work. There was a fun discussion in the Beasts of Chaos WhatsApp chat recently about a tooled up Doom Bull taking out Nagash in a single strike without the Sword of Judgment,
Nice.
which I greatly enjoyed. That's using my particular favorite of the great phrase, which is the Gav spawn. Which I think has. Yeah, nope, Gav spawn.
Grave spawn. Yeah, right.
Right, exactly. You had the. I'll mispronounce the A. None of us will say it correctly.
Yeah.
That sword you get out of that great fray is an absolute killer in the hands of a buffed up Doom Bull. Anywho. So my pick. I want to do a shout out to a friend of the show who I want to have back on sometime soon. He hasn't been on for a little while, and given that I've actually started working on this stuff recently, I want to shout out the Terrain Tutor. He's a great dude. One of the nicest guys in the world. Mel is an awesome artist, craftsman. I know he thinks of himself as a craftsman, but he's certainly an artist. For people looking up for cool ideas for display boards, he's recently been doing a series where he's making like it's called High Peak Pass. And if you're interested in snow effects and ice effects and stuff like that, he shows you how to make a wet, icy road, like actually pretty quickly and easily. And it just looks fantastic. It's solid as all get out. You can use it on your display board. It won't mess up, won't crack or break off or anything like that. It's a wonderful project. It'd be a beautiful idea for a display board. But specifically, shout out because he just hit 100 100,000 subs, which is incredible in our niche of the hobby to hit 100,000 subs. So big shout out to him. Couldn't be more deserved. All the time and effort and everything he puts into it. And he is doing a giveaway. So I will link his giveaway down below. He has like a 1,500 pound or dollar or whatever. He has a big prize pool of stuff he's giving away to people. So check it out. Check out his content. If you're looking for inspiration on terrain on your table, display boards, anything like that, or diorama work, there is literally no better source. And you couldn't be watching a nicer guy's videos. So there you go. All right. So gentlemen, all those, by the way, are going to be linked down below. So you can check those out once the show uploads. Let's talk about some hobby time. Doom, what are you working on, man?
So I've got the Hellboy squad here. I've got 20 Bestigors, and I'm painting them up. They've all got red skin and gold chainmail and then black armor, and each one looks like Hellboy. And they're my little line breaker missile torpedo units. So it's all about the Beast of Chaos for me at the moment, and probably going to be that way for about the next 4 months.
Are you doing now? Is a 30 block a standard in your army, or what are you looking at? Are they?
No, absolutely not. Just 2 10-man units, and
All right.
And I personally, for how I like to play, I would only ever take them in 10-man units. Okay,
I like where your head's at. That's how I feel about them too. I think they're actually really good as tenors, but I knew you had 30, so I wasn't sure where you were going with it. Given the way that, how do you see them being used, like in conjunction with your other forces? What's your ideal setup?
So for me personally, I need a line breaker unit in all of my armies. So I need to have a way to take their chaff off the table, and while mine is still up, or I need something to send in to soften things up before I commit my enlightened or whatever else it is to it. So 10 Bestigor on the charge is 30 attacks. If it's against daughters, it's 30 attacks, hitting on 3s, re-rolling 1s, then wounding on 3s. It's enough damage to take a chunk out. Or if you need to wipe, just say a 10-man unit of witches, which acting as a screen, that's what 10 Bestigor are perfect for. So they're a pretty versatile unit, and I can fire them away, and once they get taken off or countered, it's only 120 points down, but they've made a hole for the rest of my army to go do what it needs to do.
Nice.
So that's how I'm sort of planning on using them.
I like it. They're so economical at this point. It's crazy. And what's really awesome about them is they're still great models. I think Bestigor still look fantastic. I mean, they're a slightly older model, but I think they've completely held up. I think they're just some of the coolest looking beastmen. And I will say, for the record, right here, that I would like to formally retract one of my previous statements.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh, I know which one.
And come around to say, Doom and Darkness, you were right, sir. I was wrong. Okay.
Are we talking about Chaos Knights?
No, we're talking about no. I stand behind anything I ever said about Chaos Knights. No, I'm talking about Ungies. Okay, our Ungor friends. I had made fun of them and said I thought they were stupid looking models. Then I painted 10 of them because that was the first 10 I ever painted. Honestly, I just kind of looked at them and eschewed them in the past. But sitting down, with because I did the Herdstone, I had to have the sack tenor ready. And so I painted up my first 10 Ungor, and I loved them. I thought they were just adorable. Some of them have little 6-packs. Some of them have little pot bellies. Their faces are wonderful. They're just great models.
My little guys, my army's red, like all red skinned. And so the little Ungor, they look like the little classic Red Devils out of like any movie or whatever you've seen.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And it's really, really cool. I love them. Yeah.
That's great. I have completely turned around on them, sitting down and painting them. They were so fun. I love they have little weird, funny, shaped bodies and funny faces. So I've come around. So I officially retract my Ungor hate. I'm on their side now. All right.
You're lucky too, because they heard you.
They were coming for me, but now they're like, well, all right, he's okay. He's all right.
Cool.
Call it off. Back into the woods, boys. Back into the woods. Okay. Tom, what are you working on, man?
Daughters. I am painting some Canary right now. These are actually my heart renders, which it's funny. Like I've actually come around on, and I'm not as hot on heart renders in general. And I have some reasons for that, but yeah, that's not here nor there. And I've been glazing wings, and so like my wings are all the glazing going on. And you probably won't be able to see this, but like lots of glazing. Yeah, you probably can't.
No, it shows up. It's fine. Yeah, we get it.
Yeah, so it's coming through slowly but surely.
That's what you do. Those wings are an awesome palette to work with. They're great. I love those wings. They're great models. So I support the Canary. And yeah, I mean, whatever. We'll talk about heart renders when we do another doc show. Maybe next week. We'll deep dive on heart renders next week with Ben and heart renders versus life takers. Why don't you trot out your insane life taker idea next week with Ben? And we'll see what he thinks about it. Maybe he'll give you the green light and he'll tell you I'm wrong. I would definitely trust him over me.
I think I don't think you're wrong, Tom.
There you go.
Having a chaff unit doing 3 damage on a charge profile, that's pretty good.
I think they're all good.
There isn't anything bad in the army.
No.
Yeah.
Even the Bloodstalkers or whatever, the Bow Sisters. Bow Snake
Yeah,
Sisters.
I reckon that's a...
No, you can stop.
That's a bridge too far.
I think the inclusion of them is a good way to make friends.
That's probably accurate. Yep.
Okay. For me, I am working on my I'm still working on the Golden Demon Winners White Dwarf Challenge. And hopefully I'm going to be able to finish it up here very soon. I'm very close. It's all just scattered around me because it's all these subcomponents. I can't show it. I did clarify with them and they don't want you to show it. And so I said, okay, that's fine. So I won't be able to share pictures of this when I'm done or anything, which makes me sad. You'll have to wait till it shows up in the magazine.
They control you, Vince. They control you.
This is what you get for you're part of the system now, Vince.
Oh yeah.
That's what it is. No, I mean, like, I'm participating in this thing. You play by rules. That's what rules are. But I'm excited about it. It's a scene with Saint Celestine and the Tzeentch Sorcerer Triumvirate. And you already saw the base last week, which is this thing right here. I can just show that because it's unpainted, and there it is. So, it's coming down to the end. The base is like one of the last things not painted. Everything else is done, but I've got like Tzeentch Sorcerers and Celestine and her wings and their backpacks, and it's just like it's all scattered around me right now. And 2 weeks of solid work on these guys, I am ready to pass them back over and be done with them. That's for sure. But yeah, they're a lot of fun. I mean, this isn't the first Saint Celestine I've painted, and it won't be the last. I love the model. So I'm going to have a real conflict next year if Slaanesh and Plastic Sisters come out too close to each other. That might accidentally get up in each other's business. Like, I don't want to have to do Chaos Sisters, but I don't know what to tell you. I can't help it if the excess grabs me. So, guys, let's talk about some second tier armies, shall we? What do we even mean by second tier? I have gone on record and say that I hate the tiering concept in general. I think people read too much into it. I think it is a helpful guide. The problem is when you start talking about it, people read it as dictum, right? As though, like, if you just pick up Daughters of Cain, you get to win games.
Right. Which is not true.
And that's not true.
Partially true.
Partially true if you really know what you're doing, and depending on your player and the scenario and the terrain and Daughters are a fairly complex army to play, but in the aggregate, we can make some general guidelines and say that, like, well, on the whole, there are about these like 13 armies that all tend to sort of cluster at the top, right? That good players can take these good armies and win with, right? And then there's sort of a tier below that. These tend to be sort of the armies that maybe they don't have as much support or as many tools. But I argue that in the hands of a good pilot, they can be quite effective and they can be a lot of fun. And as Doom said at the top, isn't it always more fun to be the underdog, right? So we're going to talk about those underdogs today, a selection of our favorites, why we think they're fun, how we think you can make them competitive, if at all, and maybe a little bit of what we hope eventually happens with them, if anything. Okay. So we're just going to go round robin on this. We're each going to make some hot picks of our favorite second tiers, and we'll go from there. So Doom, you're the guest, buddy. You get to start us off, and I bet you've got a favorite that you want to start with.
Well, I just want to talk about the definition of second tier armies a little bit first.
Go for
because
it.
I think it's such a like, I think when you go to a tournament, say it's a 70-person tournament, right? You have 15 people there with fully optimized top tier lists, and they're the diehards that you find up the top. And then you probably have 50 people there with second tier armies, because it's not that they've intentionally done that at all, but they've taken a combination of the armies they like with the models they like and so forth, and merge something else. So I do think that you can have a second tier army that is still Stormcast or even Daughters of Cain or something like that. And it's simply where you have, you know, the optimal choices, which is the evocators and the sequitors, for example. You say, you know what, I'm going to leave them at home. Maybe I'm going to take some sequitors, but I'm going to take concussors instead of evocators. You know, you can always tone down that top tier so that your army is unique. And in the scale of Stormcast armies, it's still second tier. And you see that at tournaments where you see there's 10 Stormcast armies, and there's always one or two at the very top, which are optimized. And then you see them spread out throughout the rest of the tournament as well. So I think there's value in you can still play one of those top tier armies if you like, and then make a conscious choice to say, you know what, I'm not going to fully optimize it because I want to play with these second tier armies. If it's putting Blood Sisters in or the bows or whatever it is,
taking turtles or something in your Idoneth list, right?
And when you play against your opponent as well with an army like that, not only do you need to try and play better because your army isn't as optimized, but your opponent gets a really rewarding experience from saying, I've never seen that unit before. I wonder what it does. They have that revelation of how it performs. They go, wow, I really like that. It's really, really cool. And I think you get a little bit more respect as well for being different. You know, the person that puts down 3 units of 30 Volkites, right? As opposed to, you know,
the general response from the opponent is going to be like,
yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. So I think that's one way that you can make a second tier army by still playing, you know, what's considered generally to be a first tier army. And then I think you can also take something that could be considered largely a third tier army and min-max it to like to high hell and play that army as hardcore and competitively as you can and bump yourself up into second tier to a point where you can still perform well. It's highly unlikely you're going to win all your games at all, but you can still perform better than people would expect of your army. So I think it's a big basket term which we can lump a lot into. But in the context that you're talking about, the first one that I think is worthwhile mentioning is Darkling Covens.
Oh, you left turn me. We were going to the ogres, and you're like, wow, dark elves. I love it. All right, man, hit me. I love this. I love this. All right, hot pick right out. You're screaming out of the gate here with the Darkling Coven. So walk us through it. What do you like about these bad boys?
Well, firstly, you have magic, you have strong magic, and you have -1s to hit built into your magic. Okay, so -1s to hit are a critical component, I think, of successful armies in this modern day. You have a battalion that can get your drops down really quite low. So that's useful, and it also gives you the ability to fight in the hero phase, which is one of those out of sequence things that always boosts armies to the next sort of power level. You have executioners, which obviously do fantastic mortal wounds and are a real beat stick, but they can be switched on and off, right? So there's big downsides to Darkling Covens, but there's big upsides as well, which I think puts them right on second tier, pushing into first tier. But I think they're still a second tier army. Blackguard are still really, really good because despite you look at them, you think, yeah, they're good, but your eye is always drawn to the executioners. But a 30 unit of Blackguard, that whole unit is fighting, right? And it's just an insane amount of out of attacks coming out of it. And you have the little MSU as well. Plus, you have some really good allies. So you can fill any of those roles. You can get your canaries in there to teleport down. You have those movement shenanigans still. You can build in. You can add in shooting. You know, you can have Stormcast, Ballista. You can do all that sort of stuff. So I think as far as a second tier army, which is really strong and super underrepresented in the meta at the moment, Darkling Covens is my order pick. I'll put it that way.
I dig it. Can we also talk about just how good the army looks on the table? How well
Oh,
those
yeah.
models have held up, right?
Yep.
These are still some of the most gorgeous models they've ever produced. The army looks imposing and impressive because it is this like massed infantry of Blackguard and Executioners, which have like an amazing silhouette and looks so good when they're sort of massed up together on the table. During last year's Holy Havoc, Tom and I played a team army that of like somebody who had like 30 Blackguard, 30 Executioners, something like that. Like, you know, just big groups of these Darkling Coven.
It was Wanger. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was great. Like, it was just so cool to look at.
It was punchy and it hurt.
Yeah.
It's good.
You're right. It looks like a medieval fantasy army that you have in your imagination, doesn't it? You know?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
That's a good description.
Yeah. So no, I love that pick. Solid allegiance ability too. Keeps your units basically to the point where they're almost always at sort of maximum efficiency, right? For a lot of those like tiered bonuses. I think if there was one shame to them, it's that that the sorceress on the Black Dragon is so underwhelming, right? And that's really a shame. Because that is a really cool model.
Whenever I build a Darkling Covens list, the first thing I put in is her, and then she is also then the first thing I take out.
Right.
You know, so I start the army by adding her in, I build the rest of it, and then I go, right, how can I optimize this? Take her out and fill in the blanks.
Yep. But it is an army that has a lot of interesting potential. I mean, Tom, I know you've thought around Darkling Covens. Anything you want to add on that? Because this has been one you've bandied about a lot.
They have the magical cast bonus on command. Like the sorceresses all are carrying around a +2 cast bonus by sacrificing one dumb model.
Sure.
Like sacrifice a dummy nearby, get +2 to cast.
Sure.
Which, I mean, like that's a really big deal. Like +2 is not an insignificant bonus, and it moves all those 7s, endless spells to 5s. So yeah, that's my vote.
Well, exactly. It makes things like cogs actually pretty achievable, right? Like, because it's real easy
to cogs on those units are like that solves your movement problem.
Right.
On a foot army like that.
Yep. Because suddenly you can move around the board quite quickly.
Yep.
Yeah. You're hard to pry off. You hit like a truck. Your units are cool. They look good. Yeah. I dig it, man. Darkling Covens, hot pick. I enjoy that. Do you want to talk for a minute about any of the individual units? Like, do you want to deep dive on any of them for a moment? Like, we talk about the Executioners. Do you want to talk about the Executioners and how they work real quick? Because I think it is probably the backbone of the army in its effectiveness, right?
Well, it is and it is. I mean, the thing with the Executioners is when you hit on a 6, it does 2 mortal wounds, right? So that's huge, but it's a modifiable one, so that it can be switched off with a negative, so they can be countered fairly easy, and also they're not exactly the most survivable unit. So you wouldn't be wrong to want to take a big unit of 20 or 30 in there for redundancy, but personally, in this sort of day and age, units of 20 and 30 things that aren't survivable just get blown up in one attack by an enemy. So I'm generally of the feeling of MSU is the best, and I'd prefer to see 10-man units of Executioners run than 2 blocks of 30 or something like that. I think that's the better way to go. But your individual units, so the crossbowmen, the spearmen, the bleak swords, and so forth. You can argue about which one of those is better. I don't think it really matters. I think you really just want to take whichever one you like to paint best of those, because they're really screens. They're really to be sacrificed. They're to fill out that minimum component of your battalion. And I think it's, the game probably for them isn't lost in whether they've got crossbows, swords, or spears. It's sort of the larger scale thing. So there's not that much more to them, really.
It's a very simple army. Like, it isn't a huge list, obviously, right? Like, it's not a deep list. So talk about if we think about the future of them, what would you like to see happen with these guys? Like, does anything ever need to happen with them? Or are they just like...
No, they need to get merged with is it Order Serpentis or Order Draconis? It's the Dark Elf, Cold One Riders, the Dreadlord on the Black Dragon, and so forth. You add that back in there, and you just flesh the army out completely. You give it a spell lore, and it's good to go. The aesthetic is current. You can basically combine those 2 factions, give them a Beast of Chaos book type thing, and you're sweet, man.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, I have to wonder, like, they're sort of in this weird place where they almost have enough units that it would be hard to build them into a completely new force, right? Like it's not some like arbitrarily small thing. Where you can just grab like Ardboys and turn them into Iron Jaws, right? Like where you're picking up like basically one unit. Or Daughters, where it was like the Witch Elf and the Cauldron, and then you just explode it from there, right?
Well, you have the like the, what are they called? The Warlocks, right? That riding on horses. They have their alternative build, which we all used to take in Warhammer Fantasy like crazy, spam like crazy. The Shadow Riders or whatever they're called, and they seem like a logical inclusion into that army, as far as I can tell. I'm not sure why the bolt throwers went the way of the dinosaur, but they're also a natural sort of inclusion. So I mean,
if you're going to do that, why wouldn't you do Doomfire?
Just ally the actual Doomfire Warlock.
You could just ally them in, but I'm talking about as far as an inclusion into the army as a whole, and then incorporating into a tome or something like that.
Oh, got it.
Those riders seem like a logical choice.
All right, dig it. I think you could do something with it if they combine them. It's not that I wouldn't see it happening, but then who the hell knows? I didn't see a lot of things happening, and I'm usually wrong. So what do I know? There you go. Dig it. Good first choice. Strong out of the gate. Tommy, what's your first choice?
Well, despite the narrative that you're popularizing, I'm going to go with Legion of Asgore, so Chaos Dwarves, as a real army that is a tier, what would traditionally be called a tier 2, but I think it has all the tools to succeed.
Not a real army. Go ahead.
Because it's an army that has a bunch of 4-up save battle line units that are fairly cheap. It has a caster that has a 36 range -1 to hit spell. A 36-inch -1 to hit spell.
Oh yeah. Hey Doom, do you like the Demon Smith? Is that a guy you enjoy, or just checking on that?
Yeah, man. I mean, one of the most important things there is that not only is it -1 to hit, but the unit can't run.
Yeah,
right. So eat that, witches.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Yeah, you're dead on. They have range in a meta that is not set up well to defend against range. They, that neat ability that the Blood Sisters have, where you get 5 shots and you're fishing for 6s for 1 mortal wound.
Sure.
Their 10 battle line guys with guns for 100 points all do that. So they get 10 shots at the bite of the apple to trigger mortal wounds. They have magic. Then you have the big bull centaur guys that hit for just hit as Mack trucks. Not to talk about the Kadai, which are just cheaters, throwing what is it, 6? What's the attack profile? 5 attacks. There it is. 5 attacks per model. Yeah, so they're 3s and 4s D3 damage. It's just they are Kadai are powerhouses. Just across the line, the army is a hidden gem, a tier 2 list is what I would say.
Yeah, I mean, obvious downsides is that you got to mortgage your house to get the army.
You don't. It is more expensive to buy a Fire Slayer's army than it is to buy a Chaos Dwarves, a Legion of Asgore.
With getting started boxes now existing for Fire Slayers.
Yep.
Okay.
Because the inventory is approximately the same cost, but your characters for Fire Slayers, you're paying $30 a character, so it's $120 for 4 characters. It's $30 for 3 Battlesmiths.
Is that counting shipping?
No, but if you're going to buy the army all at once, shipping's free.
There you go. All right, fair enough.
So
accept that.
Yeah, I mean, it's they have all the tools, is what I would say. I'm a big fan of the Legion of Asgore.
Okay.
And I think there's gas in that engine, in a very real way.
Strong allegiance ability, certainly.
Yeah.
And they have trains. That's kind of neat. There aren't a lot of army with trains. They have trains. They can literally run train on people. That's the thing.
Indeed, they can. So that's my vote. So if we're talking about things that people haven't spent enough time looking into, and I think that Rob Symes, had a strong.
He's obviously running them strong. Yeah, he's all in on them. So you know, it's an interesting army. My real army jokes aside, it's a cool looking army. It's the only dwarf army that I rate in any way as looking not bad.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Yeah.
That's
Thanks,
a completely personal opinion. I'm not trying to anger our dispossessed or KO fans in the audience. I know you're out there.
You don't want to anger the dispossessed.
No, look, I'm in the book of grudges already. Okay.
Right.
Because I've been a long time hater of all things dwarven. I've always thought dwarves look terrible and uninteresting. So, and I'm not changing that opinion. I stand behind it. If you like it, awesome. Like what you like. I don't like it. They look like little stunty nothings. They're just beards and axes. That's all they are. Just walking around the battlefield.
You're a terrible person.
I'm sorry. This is the way. This is who I am, man. I'm not going to change me. There we go. But you know, they don't look like that. Those guys look cool. And again, trains. I'm a big one. I like their war machines, I think, most of all. They have the coolest looking, most unique, heavy machinery war machines. So that's a plus for them. I like tanks and big giant machines. All right. Speaking of big giant machines. Well, before we go to that, Tom, is there anything you want to see happen with you guys in the future? I mean, they're relatively well supported already, other than, in fact, their Forge World. Is there anything else you need to see happen with them?
No. I mean, I think that GW is doing what they need to. The only thing I might suggest is open up endless spells, maybe. I mean, they don't need it, but it would be nice if they had some additional tools that way.
Oh, you're saying make like the beasts have in the Stormcast, and I don't have like a dedicated pack of endless spells. Sure.
Yeah.
I would suggest Ghost Train. They summon a fire train, just a ghost train.
Okay.
I said, Tommy, I feel like did you not collect trains as a child, Tom? Is that what it was? Did you
didn't.
You don't have the same love of trains that I do? All right.
Nope. That's all you.
Okay. All right. Now to my pick. Speaking of horrible machines, there's only one army that I would select here as my second tier, and that's obviously Skaven. And I'm not talking about some kind of ridiculous Skyr or Pestilence nonsense. I'm just talking about Skaven. I'm talking about running Skaven, like real Skaven, where you play a bunch of Skaven, and they're just rats. And even though you're generic Chaos Allegiance, because you have to be, because that's how the world of Skaven is structured right now, you're still only picking Skaven. You don't pick other things, because those don't belong. You're not taking Chaos Warrior Battle Line. That's nonsense. That's garbage. They don't hang out with rats. You're playing Skaven. Because Skaven are Skaven, and they're awesome. They don't need anything else. Incredibly deep selection of units. They have a good amount of like actually really strong shooting again, which like in a meta that isn't often expecting of shooting, they can do a lot of good work with it. They have incredibly undercosted shooting units that are quite effective at killing things like infantry that are made of tissue paper, but who cares? Like, that's fine. Whatever. Just don't die, or do die. Who cares? Because they cost nothing. They have some of the best leaders in the games. A Gray Seer is an incredible model as a spellcaster with an awesome spell that has a 26-inch range and a solid command ability that stops one of your lessens one of your big weaknesses, which is Battle Shock. And he's 100 points, and he can reroll his casts. It's one of the more potent spellcasters, or just sort of that type of model in the game. Your Vermin Lords are amazing. Need we talk about how cool the Deceiver is? The Ice Pick teleporting assassin, sneaking around the board, ending 6 inches away, and ice picking people. You know, like we can keep going. The roster's so deep, right?
Yeah.
Clan rats at packs of 40 of these idiots for 200 points. You know, these are like they're in like the zombie marauder territory, and I would argue they're way better than any of that garbage because they can retreat and charge, which makes them like the ultimate chaff ever. Mm-hmm. They're also quite fast when they retreat too. Like they actually get a bonus to speed when they do so, which is fantastic. Their movement is 8 inches on the retreat, making it very easy for them to shift out of combat and into a different one. Their main warlord character can do the same trick, but in combat, like he can hit and fade, bounce out after he attacks, not before. Sure, it's only 50% of the time, but that's the life of a Skaven, man. It's bitter and short. What do you do? They have the only guy in the game in power armor with the Arch Warlock, who's wearing, Mark 0.5 power armor and an incredibly efficiently costed double caster who can also go into melee and beat some people in the face.
Yeah, and a small cannon, warp cannon on his arm.
Yeah. Like,
I think Skaven are like the hardest second tier army you could get. I think you can make them so strong. You always struggle a little bit to build in all of those different things that you want, but like the Verminlord Warp Seer is, I think, one of the strongest models in the entire Chaos range.
Mr. Ratmaker.
But the spell he's got, Howling Warp Gale, prevents units from flying, running, and then halves their charge range. Those three
so
things
good.
combined is enormously strong. Like Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon, you're stuck back there behind your own chaff wall now. If you can keep something like that out of combat, it's just huge.
Absolutely brutal on Night Hunt, an army that often relies on flying all of its stuff around, and now suddenly you ain't flying nowhere. Like, that's it. That unit does not fly anymore.
Yep. And when you say like halves charge range, you think, oh yeah, that sounds strong. But then when you roll the dice, you go, I've got a 4-inch charge to make. I'm halved. I need to roll an 8. What? Like when you're in that moment, the power of it really sinks in. I think Skaven are just amazing, and they're little cheaters as well. So they're avoiding the to hit modifiers with Wart Lightning cannons and so forth. They've just got all the dirty tricks, and I think they're so good. And Storm Vermin, man, Storm Vermin are just like, you can build your army around them and concentrate on them, and they will rip your enemy apart.
Yeah, especially backed up by, say, like a Warbringer who puts Death Frenzy on them, right? And suddenly they're always attacking because they go Blood Warrior style, where even if you lose them, they still fight.
Yep. 2-inch range as well, so they're like fighting 3 deep. It's so good.
Yep. Exactly. Again, making sure that with that Death Frenzy, no matter how much somebody chips into you, you're definitely fighting with everything, right? They're going to get over there with that effective 5-inch threat range. And again, like, we can keep going. Like, wacky fun stuff is the Bell, which isn't that expensive and has ridiculously silly random effects. The most common of which is a bonus to cast for everybody in your army. Right. Yep. That can make your entire army move faster. Like, its buff its command ability buff is an army-wide movement bonus.
Yeah.
Right. We haven't even mentioned Storm Fiends yet, or Plague Monks, both of whom have their own brand of insanity. Right. Storm Fiends have multiple different ways to go insane. Not the least of which is, of course, everybody's favorite mortal wound spitting, flame cannons that, again, -1 to hit. I don't know what that means, but hey, hero standing near a unit, why don't you just eat a bunch of these mortal wounds and we'll see how that works out. We'll just see if you melt into a pile of slag on the ground.
Yep. Doesn't matter if you're a bloody Star Drake or if you're a Vampire Lord with an Ethereal Amulet. You just put the warp fire hoses on those bastards, and it's glorious.
Get the hoses.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's just, the army has so many different crazy things going on and can be built in so many ways. I think the real challenge with them is exactly what you said. You have to have a concept in mind, right? Because you can't take everything you want.
Right. There's just too much.
Right. I mean, let's not even mention all the ambushing stuff like the Warp Now Vermin Lord and the fact that you can take the tunneler thing, to just make any unit tunnel, and you've got ambushing gutter runners. Like, half your army you can easily pull the sort of Rayherd trick of bringing half your army on from off board, right? Very easily. Only they don't have to come in from the edge. You can just come in anywhere.
I think if you were a person that wanted to try and get ahead of the curve and position yourself just to have a top tier army straight away, I'd be working on Skaven. Not that there's any indication they will get a book soon, but when they do get a book, I'm sure it's going to happen eventually, and you combine all those units and you give them spell lords and you give them battalions. They're going to be insane. They're going to be absolutely amazing. So, like, after Beasts, I think Skaven is, I have most of my Skaven sort of done because I use them in mixed chaos, but they're pretty high. A pure Skaven army is pretty high on my list of priorities.
It's also just wacky fun to play, right? Because you have a lot of like risk reward extra effects, like when you fire your weapon teams and stuff like that. It's an army you have to like randomness. If you're like me, where I like random things happening and things going wrong and things blowing up, like that still happens. They pushed it just correct to where it's not back in like 8th edition and 7th, it was often too common. Like half your army could just explode off the table and around. That's not what happens here. But your units will sometimes basically, backfire just enough to make it funny, but not so much that you can't rely on your stuff.
Thematically, they're also the second tier of the Chaos Gods. They're the fifth Chaos God. They're the one that they've been bolted on, and the other ones don't really truly consider him, but you deserve it, and you're the true Chaos God. And so it's just, it's great, I think. Yeah. Everyone's rocking bloody Maggotkin and Khorne and whatever else, and Slaanesh is going to be going crazy, and then the little Skaven player sneaks in the back door.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They always figure into every story as the spoiler, right? Like how many times have we ruined Nagash's pyramid now? I mean, the Necroquake was the 3rd time we've blown up that dumb pyramid. And
I couldn't believe it when I was reading it. I was like, "Oh my god, not again!" Like, you see this coming, guys? Come on, are you serious? It's like watching the new Star Wars movie they made where they build like another Death Star,
right? Yeah,
and they destroy it in basically the same way. And the Nagash story was exactly like that. I'm like, oh my god.
Yep.
You just never learn.
Exactly, and I agree with you. They're a book away from just popping off. But here's the thing. I don't think you need the book to have a ton of fun with them and to be competitive with them now. And what's great about them is because they have such a depth of units, you can tilt that needle. Like you mentioned earlier, the idea of, armies having settings, right? That even in these like quote unquote tier 1 armies, that doesn't mean that every list in there is a tier 1 list, right? There's plenty of fun lists in things like Daughters or Sylvaneth or whatever. Like with my Sylvaneth, I've always favored the YOLO trees list where you just take a bunch of like Durthu and your spirits of Durthu and things like that, and you YOLO at the enemy and just alpha into them. And it makes me laugh. But which is a terrible list, but it's fun. But this is the same way. You can play with like both a very hard edge type of Skaven setting, or you can go super ridiculous, fluffy classic. You can lean shooting, you can lean melee, you can have mortal wounds coming out everywhere or not. Like there's just so many built-in options in this army. It's fantastic, even as it is now. So that's my hot pick. I was thinking about trying to total how many points of Skaven I have just to know where I'm at. I didn't do it yet, but I'm ready. Let me just say that when that book comes out, I'm good to go. I'm solid. I'm solid. So there we are.
I'm going to go with my own personal bias, to quote Tyler, and talk about Gutbusters. So
yeah, man. Now we're talking. This is what I expected you to touch the first time around. So let's talk about the guts. Go. So
they're my destruction pick, and I love them on so many levels for a whole bunch of reasons. So firstly, from a hobby aspect, they're a good, fun army to paint. They're quick, they're low model count, they have big spaces, and they have a lot of flesh, and you can try it. For me, they were the first army that I tried freehand tattoos on, right? So that took my painting up to a new level, and that's important. But from a gaming perspective, every model in the army is 4 wounds, and every model in the army does multiple damage as well. So that every unit in the army, I think I said that the wrong way, but so it's one of the few armies where you can have damage 3 at the drop of a hat. And they also have extremely efficiently costed butchers, which not only are wizards, 7 wounds, but they also have a passive buff as well. So really, really strong. You struggle with bodies, and you can struggle with chaff. You can put Noblars in, but points are a bit of a points are very precious in that army because you fill them up really quite quickly. So the army is every single unit in the Gutbusters army standalone off its war scroll is really, really good. It lacks all the bells and whistles that that the other armies have, but and it lacks obviously an allegiance ability or anything like that. But you can go in there and you can just smash people's faces. The other thing that's glorious about it is that because the army is actually kind of quite simple, you can put much more focus into enjoying the game with your opponent. and invest in your opponent and those interactions than trying to remember, oh, my cauldron is in range of this and I've got this reliable and I'm on this turn, which means I get this allegiance ability and so forth. It's kind of like Iron Jaws. When you can put all of that aside, you can just concentrate on yelling out that WAG and running across the board and have a lot of fun. So Gutbusters, I think, are just absolutely solid, but the big problem with them is most of their units hit on a 4. And so with the prevalence of negatives to hit in the game at the moment, they go to a 5s. They go to 5s and they just suffer and they start losing. But Gutbusters are my personal favorite. But I almost think they're a tier 3 army that you can really min-max and push them up to the 2. So yeah, those are guys.
Nice. Now, you've been a fan of these guys for a while. I will say aesthetically, I'm not sure I love the army. I've never liked they're like that sort of Charlemagne-ish build, right? They're muscular, but they got the dad bod, the mega dad bod, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, it's not an aesthetic I favor. I've been very clear about that. I did see
well, hashtag real men have curves, and we can't all be like corn berserkers, and all be rocking giant bloody chests and 6-packs and look at in real life, like if you, me, and most of the viewers, if we went out, we took our shirts off, we got a bunch of machetes and shit, and we ran down the road yelling, we'd be bloody Gutbusters, right?
I'm not disagreeing with anything you just said. 100%.
And that enemy that has us hit them with all that flesh and all that wargaming awesomeness and soda behind us, it's going to be devastating, just like the Gutbusters. So,
sure.
I
will say that the ogre heads do fit on Minotaur bodies as well. So if you want like the big muscly, like sort of like hairy chested bodies, like the Zangief bodies, you can go for that build as well. You can just pick up Bulgor Minotaurs and put ogre heads on them. That does work. So maybe you want a mix of some units. Maybe you want your Iron Guts to look a little more like to be the more muscly dudes, and your standard bulls to be the dad bods. That could be an option. I'm just throwing stuff out there.
No, you don't. You just want to take the greatest model ever made, which is, like they were the first army I got in fantasy, and actually looked over the range, and I was like, you know what? I can have guys in pantaloons with feathers in their hats, or I can have these rocking guys that just want to eat everything and just charge into it's so good. Gutbusters are the way of the future. One day they're going to get a battle time, and they're just going to be everywhere. You can't stop them.
They're really not, but okay.
All right, here's my question for you.
Mm-hmm.
So right now I would argue that, Iron Blasters don't do anything, right? They're big cannon. Classically, this was one of the like most hated units from 8th edition, right? Everybody hated these things.
Run that up the flanks, turn it sideways, and shoot everything. Yep.
So what would you like to see out of a unit like an Iron Blaster? Or by the way, the scrap launcher. It's sort of Noblar component part there.
Well, when the scrap launcher hits, you should roll 30 dice, and each 6 is a mortal wound. Bam.
Just like it's 30 dice.
Yeah, clearly that's what it is, right? That's just to represent.
Is that one for every model in the unit, and you're just assuming you're hitting a unit of 30? Or are you just saying it's always 30 dice?
Yeah, because it's like 30 little bits of shrapnel that just rain down on
just like forks, random, just rusty bits of metal they found around. Sure.
I don't actually particularly for me, I don't particularly find shooting to be a part of the army that I really love. I know it sucks, but it's just not a component. I always thought the Iron Blaster in fantasy was a bit broken and and almost in ways detracted from the army and the theme of the army. I want like ogre tyrants and bruisers, and I want like Iron Jaws ogres. That's the sort of army I want. I want something to walk across the board and just club everything and take everything you can throw at it, and then just keep going like Rocky Balboa. That's what I want. So that's sort of where my love and what I like about the army. And the unit of 12 ogre bulls is one of the best units in the game. It's just like a full rugby team, and you're just like, boys, go. And they run across the table and they hit everything, and then they take what hits them and they keep on going. And I love that about them. So if the ogre theme was going to progress in any way, I don't really want to see like iron blasters and things like that added in. I want to see, kick-ass strong ogres that just rule the world and eat everything.
Okay. Right on. So you are given license. Let's assume they get a book. The Gutbuster Tome is coming, and you are giving license to add one new unit to it. What's the one new unit you're adding to the ogre force? What do you want to see?
I want to see a unit of bruisers. It's just 2 models. They're huge. They're covered in armor completely. They have like freaking 9 wounds each. So there's like 18 wounds in the unit. They walk forward. They're 3 damage. They hit on 3s. They wound on 3s. They destroy everything. They're never going to take an objective though. And it's going to be like Beastclaw Raiders all over again, where you're not going to win games because you've only got 2 guys, but you're going to have so much fun just smashing everyone aside with these guys that it's going to be so great. That's what I want.
So like, if you took like the marriage of an ogre and a chaos siege giant, right? And then you kind of put that together. That's what you're seeing, right? Like just the heavy armored, like the chaos siege giant is like the heavy armored giant, right?
If you got something the scale of the Lord of the Rings trolls.
Sure. Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's
that's the sort of scale I've got in my head. Put a lot of armor on that. Put a big gut plate on him. Give him a massive weapon. We're good to go. That's all we need. We don't need to recreate the wheel here. We know what we love, right?
Does the Great Maw get its own endless spell?
Well, the thing is that if you read the fluff in the Malign Portents book, sorry, not the fluff, the lore, like, trying to be nice here, where they talk about the Ravenak's gnashing maws.
Yep.
They actually say that Ravenak itself is a giant hungry entity that Sigmar buried with a mountain. So Sigmar found this giant, all-consuming, ravenous entity that just consumed everything and put a mountain on top of him and covered him up, right? That is Ravenak, right? And that is essentially the description of the Great Maw. And then they go on to explain how the first wizard to ever summon Ravenak's gnashing maws was an ogre butcher.
All right.
So it's sort of like in the fluff and the lore in the Realmgate rules, in the Realmgate wars and whatever else, ogres have just switched over to worshipping Gorka Morka, and they kind of go along, and when they get hungry and run out of food, they tell the orcs that ogres is the best, and then the orcs get angry and they say orcs are the best, and then the ogres kill them and eat them, right? That's sort of the extent of the lore there. But then with this Malign Portents, it sort of says, well, hang on, I can sense a little bit of a return to the Maw. So yeah, let's hope.
All right. Nice. I dig it. All right. It is a quality fun force to play, I will say, just because your units and the way you play, it's such a fair army. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's very limited. It has lots of things it can't do. Yes, it's very killy in melee and it has a lot of wounds. That's its thing. Like it really does. I think Coach is in the chat and he said a little while back, like it does what it says on the tin. Right.
Yeah.
And that's really the feel of it. There's such a strong sort of verisimilitude with the army where it absolutely you have your image in your mind of how that army would play, and then you play it and you're like, yep, that's exactly how it plays.
And people really enjoy playing against it. Like, so when I put down my Gutbusters, people are like, this is great. I've never seen this army before, because there are so many people that play Age of Sigmar that never played Fantasy before. They're brand new. So they say, I've never seen this army before. It's really cool. There are no real dirty tricks in there. There aren't many gotcha moments. It's just like, this hits, it hits hard, it does 3 damage. And people, you can have a massive slogfest, and even if you're winning, they always feel like they've got a chance, because you're not just stopping their army doing things. So it's really just great army to play, great army to paint. Great for your opponent, and I love them.
It's a good pick. Tom.
Oh, wait, before I move on, sorry.
Yes.
If you want to see passion about Gutbusters, check out James Sutherland's channel on YouTube, right? He doesn't do technology. He just sits in front of the camera and talks about his games. He loves the guts. He just plays the guts. And sometimes I just put him on and listen to him while I go to sleep. I love him.
I'll link the channel down below so that other people who may want some meditation on gut can look it up. Excellent.
Thank you.
All right, Tommy, what's your second pick here, buddy?
Would you consider Night Haunt as tier 2?
No. They're
Not-
definitely a tier 1 army.
No, I'm not talking Nagash. I'm talking pure Nighthaunt.
I would definitely consider them a tier 1 army. Yes,
Would you?
I would.
Okay.
They're very strong.
If you get to say Nighthorn, I get to say Beast of Chaos.
Right, like it's just
That's
they're
fair. That's fair. That's fair. I've heard a lot of people badmouth Nighthaunt next alongside because of Nagash exists, because Legions of Nagash is so strong.
I mean, if you were going to throw me some Flesh Eater courts, despite the Michigan GT results, I'd accept that.
Sure.
But
fair.
no, like
Um, okay, that's fair. Then I want to go with I want to go with Dispossessed.
There you go. Now we're talking. Now you're in your wheelhouse. All right, hit me. Let's talk about these stunties.
Yeah, like, so they don't have magic. Like, I'm gonna just come out of the gate and say identify, like, they don't have the tools to play the magic game.
Mm-hmm.
But they have the tools to ignore the magic game.
Okay.
A number of their units have a 5+ ignore a spell effect. Just a blanket, like that spell does not affect them. It combined with their staple hero, the Rune Lord, who is throwing around a +2 unbind.
Strong. Very strong.
Yeah, it is.
Like one less than Nagash unbinding strong.
Right. Yeah. And like this is a hero you will probably have multiples of.
Right.
And so things like Mind Razor really lose their reliability when a Rune Lord is on the table. They have some surprising combos, and a lot of it rests on that Rune Lord's shoulders because he can hand out a -1 rend to anybody in the army.
Mm-hmm.
And that -1 rend, it fires off fairly reliably. It's on a 3+, or is it a 2+? I need to double check that. It is easy. Yeah. I think it might be the exception to be at a 2+, but it fires off super easy. And that can go on shooting. That can go on melee. They arguably the best unit in their army, or one of the best units, Longbeards, just got cheaper. So a block of 30 Longbeards is 270 now, down from 300.
And yes, it's 2+, as Nick pointed out. Yeah.
It is 2+. Yeah, that's what I thought. It's like I ran a tournament with some of those. And so Longbeards are now 270. I know everybody loved the 40 block of Warriors at 300 or to 280. Sorry, but like Longbeards, like I don't think that people really understand the meat that Longbeards bring, because if they don't run or charge, their base 4+ rerollable.
Yeah,
like that's like out of the gate. 4+ rerollable.
And the models look so much better than Warriors as well.
They do, like, so much better. And so like, and they can switch on a dime. So they have their grumble ability. Their grumble ability used to give them like the Archeon trigger other hero command ability.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't do that anymore. It's dumb now. Like every hero, like what it does is every hero counts as the general for purposes of range. So instead of like the generic command abilities, like hero 9 inches or general 18 inches, like when they turn that on, everybody gets the 18 inches. Anyways. But really what is important is that they get two abilities to choose from. One makes it so that they're let me say this. By default, they have battle shock losses. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Like out of the gate,
they
cut
not the HAVE, HALVE have
HAL
reduced by 50%.
They reduce by 50% all battle shock losses, and one of their defensive ability that they can grumble and trigger gives them a 5+ ignore battle shock for every model that would run. So let's say you we're going to take 10 losses. You're going to take 5, and you're going to roll 5 dice, and of the 5, on a 5+, those people stick. And on top of that, like they're already, if you're in generic order, or if you're in generic order in the Dwarven Allegiance, or at least generic or Dwarven Allegiance, or using the battalion, you're not running at all on battle shock on 1, 2s, or 3s. So 50% of all normal battle shock rolls, you're just not running on anyways. And so the army is immensely immune to battle shock. They're resilient. But if you need those Longbeards to be offensive, they can grumble and on the turn of a hat get reroll 1s to wound. Which they're base like 4s and 3s, neg 1 rend 1 damage. And with that Rune Lord, they go to neg 2 rend. So they can go 4s and 3s to reroll 1s, neg 2 rend. This is a block of 30.
Right.
The generic general hands out +1 to wound against an enemy. So if just one of your the Warding Kings triggers their ability, everybody that's attacking a targeted unit, because like it's the +1 wound not on a unit but on a targeted enemy unit. They can call out an enemy unit, and then everybody gets +1 to wound on that unit, which means that those Longbeards are like 4s and 2s reroll 1s. So suddenly, like, the numbers begin to really work in your favor. And then the grudge system is reroll 1s to hit on a bunch of different stuff. Or if you're in the battalion, everybody always just rerolls 1s to hit. And so, like, arguably, it's probably better just to go generic order and then get reroll 1s. I mean, like, and just do the battalion. Because you're going to want the battalion anyways to reduce your drops and yada yada. And so that's go ahead.
All of the dispossessed units are really solid at what they do. Like each one with its specific role performs that role very, very well. The only problem the only real thing that keeps them back is well, apart from perhaps not having wizards in the army, but is that movement as well. You know,
mobility.
You can get around like with a pickaxe for one unit, but that's it. So that's the big thing that keeps them back.
That you're moving.
Yeah.
Like, so, in general, it's not worth it, right?
But I did, like, I had Dispossessed Dan playing next to me at Sydney GT, and he was up against Nagash, Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon, and like Prince Vordry. And he's just got these little tiny dwarves, and it was such a tier difference in height on the table as well, because everything was so short.
Yeah.
And I just looked over, and next thing, Nagash is just getting taken off because he just got torpedoed twice for like D6 mortal wounds or something like that.
Yeah.
And
there's a lot of hammers, the troll hammers from their ranged unit, the captain's weapon in the tough 4-up save ranged unit that they have is a monster killer. Like, it's a monster killer item, so it's D6 damage. Yeah. Yep.
Sneaky little stunties.
Yeah, I mean, and you can get all those guys at neg 2 rend as well, like, pretty easily. So, yeah.
Good. I think the army looks great. I always think of Lord of the Rings when, like, the Battle of 5 Armies, the Hobbit, where those dwarves show up, and then the orcs come, and they just run down the hill and form that shield wall, and I just think, I want that army. And you can pretty much almost do that with Dispossessed.
No, it's true. It's true. Like, you could easily do, like, a block of Ironbreakers and then 2 blocks of Longbeards, and then just fill in the rest. Then like a block of shooting and be done. Like, or you could run the battalion, and then you could have like chaff walls and stuff like that. But I mean, it's really good and it's really viable. And if it put together well, like, it would really stomp some people. And if you want to do allies, like, you can ally in some engine riggers if you need mobility. And like get 360 points and run a pack of 9 riggers or Sky Wardens. Did you pick Dispossessed over KO as a second tier army because you no longer think that KO are a second tier army? Correct. I think they're a 3rd tier.
Oh, I was gonna go the other way.
Yeah. The reason why is I think more than any other aspect of the army, they are hindered by their unit selection choices.
But aren't nothing has really changed with the Arcanaut company, right? They still have all those skyhooks. They're still ridiculously good shooting, and the engine rig is still just as super fast, and they still just blow everything up. So
every time anybody in the game in your army fights in any combat, you will lose the entire unit. So if I fight in your turn, whatever is fighting, I lose that entire unit. I don't care if I have 30 Arcanaut company. They're so bad at defense. Like, the Arcanaut company are 5-up save. That's it. No after saves. No, like, and so you put anything into them, I will lose 30. Because of like, and they have no command abilities worth a shit. Like, you can run an Admiral, which has a 12-inch battle shock bubble, which is good. Like,
yeah, that's good. Yeah.
or I could just run generic order and get a passive 6-inch that's always on, and I never have to spend points for.
Mm-hmm.
And so I mean, how do I want to say this? So they don't the big hit is that they don't have an anvil, and there's no flexibility in battle line units.
Can you ally in an anvil?
You can, but so like I've run the number so many times, because I have a large KO force that I'd love to run it competitively. You could bring in either 30 Longbeards, or you could bring in 30 Longbeards and like a Knight of Zeros, which is probably what you'd want to bring in. Or you could technically do the Rune Lord, whatever. Or you could bring in 30 Volkites. But if you bring in the Volkites, you can't deep strike with them. So they're foot slogging across the table. And you run into that mobility problem. So like the advantage that you had of your army, you've now lost because of you're trying to foot slog. So I've really ran around trying to make like 90 Arcanauts or some amalgamation and 30 Volkites work. But the problem is that like any of those units that get out on flanks, like because you have no other battle line options, you have to have 3 Arcanaut units. You have no choice but to have 3 Arcanaut units because there are no other battle line but them.
Yeah.
So like I run the number, the ships are all overpriced, and like it's just for what they do. Like inherently, I don't know that they're overpriced, but they need more punch if they're going to be the cost that they are. I mean, the frigate just goes out there and does nothing all game. Nothing.
Yeah.
So So yes, they are third tier in my mind, just because they don't have magic. They don't even have the tools to combat magic. Even if you run like Barak Nar, you have all the unbinds in the world with no bonus. And then you lose actually all the good allegiance abilities that need. I mean, sorry. Thanks, Michael, for getting me on it.
I didn't want to stop this because it was fun to let him go for a little while.
I'm aware.
I should have asked this question.
No, I
was about to follow on to ask you about Fire Slayers, but I thought, shit, that's just...
I will say this. I think Fire Slayers are very viable. I was actually working on a list like last night.
My problem with them is I don't know where they sit. I really don't. And I don't want to get into the argument.
They're a strong tier 2. Like I really do think like I think that the answer is not the answer is no longer 90 Volkites though.
I think we can just get all the dwarves, to be honest with you. I think we can get Chaos Dwarves, we can get Dispossessed, we can get KO, and we can get Fire Slayers, and we can lump them all into a solid tier 2 army that if you play really, really well, you can do really, really well at tournaments with.
Just take all the stunties in some kind of mixture.
Yeah, and I hate to generalize and, persecute the vertically challenged by lumping them all together like that. But, that's what we got to do.
All right.
I think they are viable. Like I would argue that they can put out a really close to tier 1 mixed list. Like I know that, and I don't think it's just skill. I mean, I really think that the tools that they have available between Fire Slayer, KO, and Dispossessed, especially because you're going to go generic order, you can dip into like a wizard, like a Luminarch or a Huracanum or something like that. Like I really do honestly think that you can get a really, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I'm considering running my mixed order dwarves for ACON next year.
Yeah, I think I think that's a legit army. I completely agree with you. I think it's solid and I think you should do that.
Or I can run my daughters.
No, you've got everything you've got. You've got resilience. You got really good shooting, and you've got mobility and high damage and engine riggers and stuff. You can it ticks all the boxes that you need. You can tunnel them as well. So I think you should just do that. I think you should be that guy.
It's a smarter play. But I'm painting these daughters and I'm really enjoying it. So
right.
All fair.
right.
Fair.
No.
All right. So now that Tom has run through all his feelings on dwarves, that's fine. Anything you want to see in the future out of Dispossessed, Tom?
I don't want to mix
about before you veered off into KO land.
I don't want a mixed dwarf tome. I do want a set of mixed dwarf battalions.
You don't want to say that again? I'm trying to
don't-
parse what you just said.
I
It seems
don't
like
want
those two things go together, though, right?
No, I don't want a Legions of Nagash style book. I don't want that. Okay.
Okay.
What I do want is I want a set of battalions released in some Firestorm or whatever, some
Okay.
other type of book that has mixed Dwarden battalions. So, like in the KO book, there's a battalion that is KO Stormcast Eternals.
Gotcha. Okay.
What I want one that is like Fire Slayers Dispossessed.
Yeah, I understand. Like a Dwarven
Dispossessed.
Alliance set of battalions. Yeah. Okay.
A Dwarven
Cool.
Alliance. Like 3 or 4 battalions that just does a bunch of permutations of those. And then
Sure, and you
I
can
think that would be a neat
various Dwarven strongholds of different types, right? Like a Skyport that is also where like that is home guarded by a bunch of dispossessed and where mercenaries of the Fire Slayers operate out of. So it combines those three, right?
Like I have mine. I made like Barak Zar, which is my like place, and that's the idea. It's a skyport that's on the edge of a volcano, and blah 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 blah. Like, and it brings together all of the different clans.
Yeah, that's a cool idea, and it wouldn't require that much additional work because it could be part of some other product, right?
Right.
So yeah, that's cool. I do hope that we see another Firestorm-esque thing. I still like those Firestorm allegiances. I think they're cool. I think that'd be a neat way, instead of doing big allegiances like that, do some interesting targeted battalions for a lot of the armies that are lacking battalions and make them interesting and narrative and, thematically in the world and point them out.
Well, that's what I would do is if I were writing books, I would do an allegiance, like a Firestorm style allegiance, and then maybe 2 to 3 battalions that support that city. And so some of the forces of that city that uses a mix of the units in that city.
Nice.
Like that's a very low hanging fruit. That's easy, crunchy. They can write that. Like it's limited scope, so it's not just a free for all of all mixed order, all mixed chaos. And that's a product that I think would sell.
Okay. So speaking of Firestorm, I'm going to talk about my second pick now. My second pick is I'm going to do this. Ready? I'm going to call it Free People. I'm going to put these big quotation marks around it because I actually think free people themselves are boring. Sorry, coach.
Oh. Shots fired.
Indeed. And I don't really care to play just free people. Like a bunch of pantaloon dudes and nothing else doesn't put gas in the tank for me. However, there's a lot of really cool stuff that might arbitrarily be called like what would have been previously grouped under like the Empire and stuff like that, right? And there it happens to be a Firestorm allegiance called the Greywater Fastness. Okay. And if everybody's familiar with this, it basically gives you access to like the Ironswald Arsenal and free people stuff and some other things. And I like a combination of that under generic order with the Greywater Fastness allegiance. Specifically, I like an army with like 3 steam tanks or 4 steam tanks or maybe a Huracanum. Call it like 30 handgunners. Maybe the Lord on horse that can give the +1 to hit. Maybe say a mortar. And maybe you're rolling at the top of every round, and in your hero phase on a 6, you get to fire one of those things for free. And maybe there's a Lordinator in there, a Stormcaster in that pack, and in the Greywater Fastest army. And you get to play. I've mentioned this army before. This is the army I speed painted in a week. I have played both, piloted this army and played against it, and I love it. It's so fun to just drive tanks around. It's like playing old 3rd edition Imperial Guard. Like steam tanks aren't that good. And this army has no wizards at all. But man, does it have a shooting phase on it. And you know what's really fun? Ramming tanks into people. That is an underappreciated thing. Like just driving into people with tanks. It's pretty fun. And if I had to rate things, that would be near the top. So, like there are more tooled versions of this that, run big giant blocks of handgunners and stuff like that. And there's more tooled, hardcore, pure free people's lists that I think are probably better, that MSU out their detachments and stuff like that. Nah. And you leave behind all the fun stuff. To me, it's way more interesting like this. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to say with free people, the truth is I've never beaten them once. So
Wow.
we have a player here, Matt the Wildform Weiss, who plays as free people, and he has beaten me every single time, hands down. Whenever I play them, I'm extremely frustrated. But no matter what I seem to do, I just get shot. I'm going to move here, you get shot. I'm going to charge here, I'm going to get shot. I'm going to attack that unit, get shot. Trying to punch your way through swordsmen to get at the crossbows at the back, which is shooting twice, is just an absolute nightmare. And they have a mental win over me. It's an army that you don't see very often as well. So there may be one free people army at a tournament, so your chances of playing it are rare. And so when you do play against it, I think you should consider yourself fortunate. Aesthetically, it's not my favorite, but the concept of the army of man, I love. So I think the army is actually really, really strong. I struggle against it in the type of armies that I like to play. It would blow Beast of Chaos out of the water, hands down. But against armies like Zench, where they can just reach out and kill your general, or
Right.
Whatever, they generally just lose. Against Star Drakes with the Mirror Shields, they have real problems. But against a lot of other armies, they are a really solid choice. So I think free people's, I think they're a legit army if that's what you love and that's the way you want to go. Check out AOS Coach. He is probably one of the world experts on free peoples. I don't know if he has a video on them in his channel or not, but there's probably something he should make if he doesn't. And they're a great army.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just it. I think you're right. Like the right way to run them is probably sticking in free people. There's some really good lists. You rely on crossbows. You rely on like the small detachments, not the mega guard detachments. You don't need them like that. Multiple detachments or whatever, grand detachments, whatever they're called. You can make your guys tough. You tend to shoot in all cases. It can be hard for them to move out and occupy points as easily, depending on the nature of the movement in the scenario. They lack much in the way of movement shenanigans. So if the scenario is really requiring like a lot of movement, not just like move to the middle and sit, they can do that relatively well. But if it's like you need to move here and then move there and then move back to here.
Well, they do have the double Griffin still, which and the Griffins can be Griffins are really solid. You give them artifacts as well, and all of a sudden they fulfill that requirement. They can 2 Griffins on one flank weighs the flank really quite well. You can't ignore them.
2 Griffins though aren't going to go out and take a point all by themselves from like a heavy anvil that's then backed up by the rest of the enemy army, right?
Well, if they count as 20 models each, they do.
Sure. If it's that scenario, yes.
Yeah.
There are
they're not going to get close though. Because what's going to happen is that player is going to create like a hedge around and against a heavy anvil, and they'll just bounce off.
Well, those Griffins are really killy. Like they're good.
They are.
Pound for pound on their points. They're an incredibly efficient model.
Yeah. You shoot that unit with 60 crossbows, with 40 crossbows firing twice, and then you put some Griffins in there as well and watch stuff melt. But no, they're not the answer to everything. They certainly have some big weaknesses, and you're right, they do get trapped in their own deployment a little bit and they're fairly static because the command ability on the general, hold the line, is you get pluses to shoot and do all your good stuff as long as you just sit here and don't move. So they do have problems with being dynamic on the board, but that's okay. Not every army can be everything to everyone.
Absolutely.
Well, I'll say this: I took my dwarves out at ACON last year, and I had a non-game against a player who was actually a GW store owner that brought free peoples because I had the mobility and could outrange them. It was like I just shot off all their crew and splashed mortal wounds onto stuff and just kind of hung outside and moved to be exactly out because I'm a dick outside of their range the whole time. So no matter how much they moved, they couldn't actually ever get into range. And I just stayed outside of that range and continued to shoot with my 24-inch guns. And it was a non-game, and I felt kind of bad. But he's like, "No, I know what this is." And so like he was really cool about it, but that hindrance can be crippling to them if somebody has a high mobility shooting army.
Sure. And it is what you said. Like certain armies, they'll basically rock the juke on, and certain armies they'll have a very, very, very uphill slog with, right? But yeah, and that's why I like that version that I talked about, where you go into sort of generic order, where you're driving around a bunch of big tanks. Like I'll push out all over into the middle with tanks, just hot rodding those things around, man. Let's do it. I think that's a tremendously fun thing. The steam tank was one of my favorite models from way, way, way back in the day. I've always had a soft spot in my heart for it. So I love to get that thing on the table. But they do have, you mentioned earlier, like the appeal of the aesthetic, right? Of like if you picture a sort of medieval fantasy army, these guys have the medieval army look, right? Like not even necessarily too fantasy, depending on what you choose. And I think that their aesthetic, you either really love that particular aesthetic, and if you do, it hits, right? It is right on it.
I'm looking forward a lot to see where they're going to go in the future with this human type faction with the Free Guild.
Sure.
I think that's one of the most exciting things to come.
Yeah, there's the thing with that is there's so many places they could go, right? Like that is to say, we could get an Armies of Azir combined book, and the free people could be the sort of core of that, with some of the other dangler, dwarf and elf and whatever stuff brought in, or whatever, or not. It doesn't matter. That could be like that. They could actually like build out some kind of like city force, right? Like this could be, because they're the bulk, like in the narrative, they're the bulk of the forces holding the cities, right? They're the Imperial Guard to the like Stormcast Space Marines, right? Not in sort of tone. They don't act the same way. Stormcast aren't necessarily, outside of like, what is it, the Vindicators? They're not like just basically psychopathic murderers, but you know,
Celestial Warringers.
Is that what it is? Whatever ones get like have just like the ones in that short story that like
They're
locked
in
the
white.
gates to the town and killed all the humans in the town, because they're like, Taint of Chaos is here. Let's do some work, boys. Get the hammers ready. But I think that like you could do like a city focused one, right? And imagine if you had a book called like Guardians of Civilization or something, right? And in it, instead of having, so we think about like the Great Fray or the Chambers or stuff like that. Imagine if your storm hosts was the cities.
Right.
And it was how each of them trained.
Yep.
You know what I mean? There's so many just interesting ways they could take that.
Totally agree.
So like I too am excited to see where they go with that. They're going to do something with it eventually. They've talked about how, they have lots of interesting plans for humans across the factions. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that over the next couple of years. Oh, Doom and Darkness became a little Doom and Darkness thing. All right. So that's my pick. Okay. So now as we're bringing this down, it's lightning round time, assuming Doom comes back before we say bye. Lightning round time. Okay. So now we're going to you pick one, and you give a couple quick sentences as to how it's fun, why you like it. Tom, lightning round choice number 1, go. You haven't talked about Split Talk yet. How have you not talked about him?
Because I don't want to spoil.
Then pick a different. All right, pause on you. Doom, lightning round time. You got like quick pick, couple sentences.
Okay.
Why they're.
I've been going through this book while Tom's talking about KO boring everyone, and 90% of them are actually really strong armies. So we're in a good spot.
No, there's so many good armies right now. Yeah,
and I don't want to take Slanesh from you, so I'll say one that's arguable, and that's the Legion of Blood. I think the Legion of Blood is probably the least optimized of the Legions of Nagash sort of faction.
It's like the second tier hiding within the Legion of Nagash. Yeah.
I think it's absolutely amazing. Obviously, it lacks some things, but it still has all the components that make it good. And I think the only thing it needs to make it super awesome is a unit of foot vampires, which are just rocking it.
Nice. Tom, heed Paul's advice. Nice. Tom, heed Paul's advice and talk about Spiderfang. Make the man happy.
Okay. Yeah. So actually, I want to spruik Doom's recap of CanCon not CanCon, of Sydney GT.
Yeah, City GT was a recent one.
Sydney GT. His first opponent was a fantastic player running a surprisingly effective destruction list, and in there he had quite a bit of Spiderfang. And he had them like multi-attacking and bonusing, and with some of those old models, the way the overlaps work, like they could bonus Grots too. Is that right? So was it the generic war boss?
Yeah, he just does destruction. It's just
destruction.
destruction.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he is like he bonus attacks on generic destruction, and so he gave it to the Spider Fang. So like, there's a mixed destruction list out there that is really effective at this. And Doom almost lost to it. No, it was a good list. And Spider Fang can auto mortal wound on 5-ups. I mean, really, all they're missing is their battalion. If they only had their original battalion that they previously had, which made all the spiders battle shock immune when like within 9 inches of an Arachnarok, we'd be having a different conversation right now.
Sure.
Like it would actually be a viable tournament army if they had that, because they actually like all their goblin wizards are double casters.
Right.
In addition to like all those bites having a shot of doing D6 mortal wounds, like the big Arachnaroks and stuff like that. Like there's some real damage there. But Battle Shock is their enemy. Like that's a really big deal for them because their spiders are 5-up morale.
Yeah.
So
Bravery
they're
5,
the Bravery 5 and 5-up save. So they're not going to last. But there's a fun list mixed in there is what I would say. Nice.
All right. Good stuff. And they could go, who knows where we're going to go with those guys, if anything. Like,
right.
I don't want to talk about I don't want to talk about Moon Clan because we're pretty sure we're getting a book. So like they're going to probably be rocketing up soon. For the same reason I'm not going to talk about like Slaanesh. Because I think Slaanesh right now is solid tier 2. I think that Slaanesh book would have to meet a very low bar to catapult Slaanesh up into tier 1. Like it has all the makings of greatness. It is everywhere you want to be with in this game right now, between the speed and the attack capabilities, the number of attacks, the units they can put on the table, all that summoning, all good. Okay. So instead I'm going to veer left. Here you go. You ready? Here's my left pick. Everchosen.
Oh, yes.
Hear me out. Hear me out. Okay. Here's your army. How much is Archaon and 3 3s of Varangard?
1,600 exactly.
No, it's 1,500 exactly now.
Oh, is it 1,500?
Yes, it's 1,500 exactly now. Okay. All right.
Okay.
So that's fine. And Everchosen can famously ally with anything, right? Any chaos, that is to say.
You have to spend. The problem is you have to spend 100 more points in Everchosen before you can get. Or I guess you could spend them in spells.
But now, buddy, now you got it exactly. The problem was there was no other 100-point unit to round that out, so you couldn't get your full 400 of allies. But now you can just buy command points or endless spells or whatever. Sweet, because I've got my 3 battle line in my Varangard, right? I got my general. Yeah. All right. So now what are we going to fill out those allies with? We're going to fill out those allies with just dumb other generically buffing heroes. Exactly. Yeah. So like mortal Lord of
you got Slaanesh. You have a Lord of Slaanesh on Demonic Mount.
Sure.
You have a Harbinger of Decay for the 5-up ward save for everybody.
Sure.
You have
the core. Aren't you still restricted to your 4-and-1 rule as well as your 25% rule for your allies?
You've got to go. You have to have.
You're right. You are. Sorry, Vince.
You're right. 1 and 4.
So with the 3 gun and okay.
Yeah, you only have 1 ally.
Sorry, Vince.
I forgot about that stupid new 1 and 4 rule.
No,
all right.
So they are terrible again.
No, it's fine. We can handle this. Don't worry. It's okay. But anyways, you can take like I could probably get. I need to think about it. But anyways, you can probably get 2 generic heroes in there. Okay, 2 of the other chaos heroes in there.
You would need 8 units.
That's fine. You could get to that. You have.
It's not possible mathematically. Because you have a Gaunt Summoner. Oh, wait. The only way, by the way, you could get to this is if... So I asked a question right after 2.0 dropped. Mm-hmm. I said, are endless spells counting as units?
Right.
And so technically, every endless spell you buy should technically count towards your unit total. Because in the chart, they are units. They qualify for all that. So technically, you could buy like those 4 and then buy 4 endless spells.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
you could
And
get
then
like
you're 8.
you only 1 and 4, so you'd only need to get 2 endless spells to get to 6 units, because then the next 2 are allies that would get you to 8. So you could do it that way.
There you go. All right, excellent. So at any rate, it's fun. It's wacky. Like, yeah, the 1 and 4 thing sucks for them. The problem is they don't have any cheap thing that lets them stay ever chosen. And keeps your Varangard as battle line, which is unfortunate. But nonetheless, I think that's a fun thing. The spells let you do it. And I think it's still like, obviously I don't worry about all the battalions. We just forget about those. Those don't exist in Everchosen. We forget about the Everchosen battalions. I love the fact that like the Varangard are so fun to run with Archaon on the board. They're like +1 to hit all the time. They can reroll their charges.
Yep.
You can give the Varangard the keyword so they can benefit from stuff. Like if you've got a Blood Secretor around, he can be granting the Khorne keyword, and then Archaon and the Varangard are all +1 attack. You could go with like the Slanesh Lord, right? And you can
Double pile in.
Yeah.
and you can double pile in. There's just a bunch of because they can rock any part of chaos. You can pick up any of those other fun chaos things.
In general, you want to lean to a single god so that everybody can stay marked the
Right.
same.
Keep in mind that you only need to do that once at the top of the game, and they ride the mark for the rest of the game.
Right.
Right.
Like the right answer, by the way, with that is to do Khorne. Like I hate to say that.
Khorne has so many of the generic Khorne things, right?
Yeah, because like Khorne, you could do, not only is there a bunch of generic ones, like you could throw in a Blood Secretor potentially as one of your options. You could throw in there's the one Khorne Lord on Juggy Lord is he gives +1 to wound on the charge, which bumps Archaon's Slayer Kings to 5s.
I think you just want to actually have your Varangard, your Arcane, your endless spells, and then fill the rest of the slots out as many as you can with Hellstriders of Slanesh. And then that way, your Varangard are just the pile in and the hold down units. They charge in, they do damage, they pin things in place, they do the double pile in. Archaon flies around being Archaon. Your Hellstriders run around, debuff everything, and also sneak objectives by being where they want to be. So that's how my
Archaon,
chosen.
You're saying Archaon just bounces off of Sequitur units. Like 10.
Sure. But I mean, that's the interesting part about having a buff hero or two in there, right? Like giving people, if you're leaning Slanesh, sure, give people a double pile in. Khorne is interesting because you've got something like the Aspiring Deathbringer, who's a pretty cheap 80-point hero who can point at Archaon and say, +1 attack or whatever, right?
Right.
The Blood Secretor. What's that?
Yeah, his command ability range is very small though, so it's so hard to have him.
Where he
in that
needs to
range.
be.
There's
Right.
yeah. The easy answer is the Blood Secretor. I want to touch on some of the other interesting things. Khorne does have a deep bench of things that are just like mortal Khorne, right?
Mm.
And both the Varangard and Archaon are mortal Khorne if they want to be, right? During the game at least.
Mm.
So, yeah, it's like I said, there's my left field pick. It's a weird one, but it can be fun. And what a beautiful army, right? Varangard are fantastic. I know somebody said it's very expensive, but
It's really not.
It's
Because
not-
you're not buying anything else.
yeah, it's like you're getting
your
1,500 points to your army. Like I don't, what are the Vanguard boxes? They about $100, right? $90, something like that. Yeah.
$180.
Well, look, we're not going to do Australian calculations. I don't know what to tell you there, man.
That's like Monopoly money.
But you're basically like those 3 boxes in Archaon. It's not the cheapest army in the world, but I don't think it's the most expensive either. That's all I would say, right? Because you buy 4 boxes, you got 1,500 points in the bank. If you already own endless spells, they're we're at 1,600, 1,700 pretty easy. So, it's I would say it's economically reasonable. And that's all retail. But there's the fun pick. It's funny, like the armies we didn't touch on, there's so many, and it's you mentioned it, so we should close out now and say what's amazing to me is actually there's not that many second tier armies left. Most things are pretty competitive in the meta right now. So many armies are in such a good place. And I think that's what's interesting. But there is still some room to cover at the same time. And a lot of these armies can be fun. And I don't want to see all the talk of like, oh, this like daughters are this good or whatever, Nurgle or legions or Nagash. People hammer on all that stuff so frequently. And there's so much fun and challenge and fun stuff to be had outside of these. And Nick is in the comments calling out for us to do Wanderers. I don't know enough about Wanderers to even talk about them. Does anybody want to briefly talk about Wanderers?
Well, all I'll say is that when I was looking through the book, that was one that I saw, and I was like, "Yep, Wanderers are the obvious pick." But there's two people in Australia that play them at tournaments across all of Australia that play them: Matt Gammy and Ty Swan, and they play that army almost religiously, and that's what you need to do to play the army. And I don't know enough to be able to talk about it. I'd need balls of steel to do that army.
Yeah, I mean it's. You know, it is an interesting army with some very, very deadly shooting that your army is made of tissue paper, right? Between Glade Guards like Neg 3 Rend round and your bow hero's ability to just like pop off, son.
That
like
dude can do some damage.
Because he no longer has the restriction of he can't build on his own attacks because because the elimination of the rules of 1.
Like somebody said that they had one do like 21 hits the other day.
Yeah, because he can just keep going now.
Right. There's no limit on like attacks generating additional attacks. Like that doesn't exist.
So if he hot rolls, he just hot rolls.
I think Wildwood Rangers are legit as well, to be honest with you.
Yep.
Units of 10, I think they are solid as, and there's a lot of good stuff there for sure.
One has to argue that certainly there's still again, we talked about like the Dark Elf models holding up. I would argue that the Wanderer models also hold up incredibly. Like the Wildwood Rangers and the Eternal Guard are both really great models. I think that the Elvish heroes look good. Like Erloth, I think is a beautiful hero model. And even the Glade Guard, like very simple infantry. They just have a nice look about them.
I think you can do a solid tier 2 mixed elf army, combining them all. I think with Wildwood Rangers, with Executioners and Blackguard, with Phoenix Temple, and then with your battle line in there as well, you can just use elves and you can put together something that's actually going to be solid. Is not top, but it's something that we solid as, and people would love it on the table as well. Like your mixed dwarves, Tom. You know, I think your mixed dwarves are better, but I think the mixed elves would get a fantastic reaction from people.
I don't disagree. I have a number of permutations of 2,000 point mixed elf lists. When they bumped both Phoenix Guard and White Lions down, that made that suddenly very viable. And the fact that Reavers have always been battle line. Like I'll just briefly mention this. Like Swift Talk agents have made a lot of jokes over the years. But a reckoning is
they've made a lot of jokes over the years. Okay.
But there's a reckoning coming on Swift Talk agents. Like, and they're good. And right now, until it gets FAQ'd, their big projected wound buff stacks. And their Reavers are battle line, and they're in Tempest Eye as well. So they get +2 or +4 movement, +1 saves in turn 1. So I'll leave it at that. And we'll have a conversation about this after Blood and Glory.
Okay.
I'll leave it at that.
Sounds good, man.
Yep.
I do like how you just snuck in like a tombstone quote. Understand it's not revenge he's after. It's a reckoning. All right. So with that, I will say thank you very much to Doom. I hope everybody enjoyed this discussion. It was a lot of fun. Doom, I appreciate you coming on and talking about some fun armies with us, man. Good to have you back.
Thanks for having me back again.
Good luck at CanCon. As is mentioned, Doom is doing his Road to CanCon series as well. So his channel will be linked down there. If you're not already subbed to Doom, you should absolutely do so. But as always, we appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time. All right, we'll see you next Wednesday. That's the thing. Now I screwed up my catchphrase. You screwed it up at the top of the show. I screwed it up now.
Good
See you
job,
next
man.
Wednesday, everybody.